I think, and I'm no expert on this, but I'm pretty sure poetry is the oldest art form there is. I mean, just think about it. I mean, you've got the Egyptians were doing poetry before there was any solid writing. You've got Hebrew poetry, Psalms, Song of Solomon, things that were written by David and his son Solomon. You got Shijing poetry, which was done by the Chinese back in about 1000 AD. All these things were done several thousand years before Christ even showed up. And it's actually safe to say that this was even done before there was actually any writing or anything that was actually written down. I actually forgot to mention the Epic of Gilgamesh. This particular epic roughly predates the book of Genesis by almost 900 years, depending on which scholars you pay attention to. If you look at like the traditions, if you were going to base it purely on the traditions of the Bible, it's somewhere around 900 years. Some scholars even say it's as far as 1500 years. My thought process is my question, I guess, is why? What is it about poetry that makes it such a important art form and yet also possibly one of the most unappreciated ones? To be frankly honest, I think one of the reasons that I am thinking about this now is Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. When Homer put together the Odyssey, it wasn't actually originally written down, it was actually sung. It was sung in what I believe, and how you pronounce it, is a hexameter. It's a form of verse, so it would be something that would be recited. This would be kind of the same way as like if you go camping with a group of friends or your family and you just start sharing stories. This was literally a campfire story, or a story that you would tell around large groups of people. And the story itself, when you read it, it's extremely rhythmic. And even in Nolan's adaptation, there is that element of rhythm and prose that is built within the story itself. But here's the crazy thing that I'm just finding out now, is that Homer's Odyssey wasn't written down until somewhere between 750 to 650 BC, which was somewhere in the ballpark of like 100 to 200 years after the story was even created. And it was actually the Athenians who are credited to actually writing it down. Make sure you guys double check my facts on that, because I'm just getting into this material. But why, again, why did they not write it down? Why was it sung rather than simply written? And can we rely on that type of information? Well, actually, from what I understand, yeah, we can. When you actually get around a group of people and you share a story in rhythm and in verse, we remember it. There's something in our minds and something in our brains that actually is wired to actually take in information more effectively when it's done so in this way. And scientists have actually studied this, that they've actually looked back at major world events and they've actually found that there's been a lot of accuracy when it comes to things that are passed down from oral tradition. And sure, I'd love to explore the neuroscience in this, and actually if you have some things that you'd like to add in regards to some of those specifics, let me know. I'm not the expert. I'm simply a storyteller who just loves poetry, loves spoken word, loves rhythm. And I think that really goes back to that question. Why does poetry matter? I think poetry is something that allows us to process big emotions. It's something that is transferable because it's rhythm, it's rhythmic. In a lot of ways, I think it's actually some of the first forms of song. And because it's rhythmic, it's able to be transferred from one person to the other much easier than something that's written down in the form of an essay or in the form of a, just actually, for lack of a better way of describing it, a book. So it is something that is what we use as human beings. There's something about how we're wired, how we're created, that needs rhythm, needs flow. I think that could also possibly be because we're 80% plus water. Give me the fact on that. But I'm pretty sure we're somewhere around like 80% water. Yeah, which water needs to flow. I don't know. Maybe there's some connection there. Food for thought. But if poetry is such a vital form of communication, why is it that it's become so underappreciated in our time? One of the biggest reasons, there's several reasons, but a big reason that comes to mind for me is that poetry requires us to slow down. And in this world that we live in, where we are caught up with the next big flashy thing, we have literally walking computers that are in our pockets that can pull up any form of entertainment that we could possibly want. We get to doom scroll for hours and hours and hours. When you are in that type of environment where we are constantly just looking from one thing to the next, we are in a culture of perpetual ADHD. We are always moving. Poetry is the exact opposite of that. Poetry is something that has to be spoken out loud. It's not something that you read quietly. It is something that you have to hear and experience. The thing that the West has gotten seriously wrong, in my opinion, and feel free to push back on this, the West has put logic first. The West has said, what are the facts? What's the data? What's the correlating thing that backs this up? And now, in a lot of ways, that's good. I think it's actually very important to check your facts and to make sure that you're accurate, especially when it comes to launching a rocket or putting a car together. Simple engineering type of problems need to be addressed with double checking and making sure that something works, right? But when it comes to our memory and the human experience and tapping into why we are here, you can't do that with logic. You can't process your emotions with logic. As human beings, we are living, breathing, spirit-created beings that have the ability to have experiences inside our hearts, inside our minds, and we can actually share those experiences with groups of people. And poetry has been the mechanism for how we do that. And I think one of the interesting things is, as we've sped up in our culture, because of this, the reading of poetry, the medium of poetry has diminished quite a lot over the last 30, 40 years. Reading of poetry itself took a major dip back in 1982. I'd love to get more into that, figure out why. But there's been a lack of economic incentive to pursue this form of art. I was talking to a friend of mine I met him a few months ago and got the chance to interview this poet. His name's Charles II. He goes by the name Red Lion Poetry. Look him up on Instagram right there, or in the description, whatever you want to do. But I asked him about this, and he said something to me that I thought was really interesting. He said that poetry is confronting. Whereas, something like music is something that we dance. For lack of a better way to phrase it, it's something we dance around. It's something that we sing about. We dance and we sing about it, but it doesn't actually always confront hard issues in the same way that poetry does. Poetry has the ability to add rhythm and verse to things in a way that and it can deliver hard, difficult truths that in a very digestible way. But at the same time, it's still confronting. And I think it's really interesting that in this fast-paced culture, I'm going to make a bold claim. I believe that poetry could be one of the antidotes that can be used to help us slow down, to help us process these big, crazy feelings that we have to process on a daily basis, because we are hit every day, every second of every day, with news about how bad things are, how crazy things are around us, and we have to and we're told to just take it. We're told to just be stoic and strong, but that's not how God wired us. God wired us to have the ability to process things, because the truth is you cannot develop a great memory without having some form of emotional connection to it. And the tool of poetry, the mechanism of poetry, gives us the ability to actually remember things in such a way that we can actually move forward into the future without regret. Because bad things are going to happen. But when we have the ability to process those emotions in a healthy way, we can actually become unstoppable people that don't become victims, but actually become victors. I might be stretching on this, but I'd love to explore this further. And I'm not an expert on this. I'd love to explore this further with you. If you guys have some ideas, or you would love for me to look up some things, I'd love to talk about it, and maybe even share some stories about it. But anyway, I'm so excited. This is Jensen. Feel free to comment below. In this world of quote-unquote experts, I would much rather tell stories and have discussions. And so that's what I want to think about this video. That's the idea that I want to have in regards to these videos. And videos like this is that it's just more like food for thought. It's something that you can take, you can process, you can think about, because you are a human being just like me. God gave you an ability to process things, and you have filters, you have mindsets, you have ways of thinking that are very different than the way I think. I don't have everything figured out. I do know that there is a God who loves us, that has a plan and a purpose for our lives, and He made us all different, and that's okay. And that's part of the process of, us figuring out this life together. So, yeah. Hit me up on YouTube. Send me a comment. Send me a video that you might want me to make if you find this interesting. And I will see you on the other side.